We cannot win at our spiritual life without sacrifices from others. I can't win without sacrifices from you. You can't win without sacrifices from me. But none of us can win without the sacrifice that God made on our behalf. We want to talk about winning at life. Let's try that again. General Douglas MacArthur had this to say: "Upon the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds that on other fields, on other days, will bear the fruits of victory." Now, Douglas MacArthur was talking about the battlefield, was talking about physical war. But we're engaged in spiritual war. And I think as we go through this morning, you're going to see that the things that we learn from sports, the things that we learn from being involved in athletic competitions, will also pay benefits in our spiritual life as well.
Now, whether we know it or not, a lot of us use these sports terms in our average daily life. Whether we prepared really well for a presentation we have to give at work, or I bring home an A on my test, my dad may tell me, "Man, you really knocked that out of your park," obviously relating back to baseball and hitting a home run. This happened a lot in today's youth generation, more seen in elementary and middle school. You still see it sometimes today in high school. But if you were to crumble up a piece of paper and throw it in a trash can, it just became societal norm, whether you watch basketball or not, to yell Kobe as you threw the paper ball into the trash can, kind of giving a tribute to Kobe and all the great shots that he's hit over the years. And then if you accomplish a great achievement, whether that be at work or in school or out on the sports field, you may yell "touchdown," talking about the great achievement that you've just accomplished.
Now, you know there's also a term that comes from the gymnastics world that some of our airplane pilots out here might appreciate. In fact, I heard a news commentator talk this morning about how some of the airline pilots were able to stick the landing. They were able to get in when the weather was bad, the conditions on the runway were bad, but they were able to stick the landing. So we use a lot of athletic terms. But I think we're all shooting for the ultimate touchdown. And that ultimate touchdown is when Jesus will say to us, as he said to the thief on the cross. In Luke 23, 42 and 43, it says, Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you're in the kingdom." And Jesus answered him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." Now, isn't that the ultimate touchdown that we're looking for? We're going to see today that concepts from sports will help us win at our spiritual life.
Now, obviously, you can't win with a bad attitude. One of the best examples from my athletic career was my 2022 junior season playing football, and I'm getting some faces down here down front. Obviously, I'll just come out straight with it. We went 0-10. We didn't win a single game that year. But it really started, our first drive of the season. We went down, it looked like a pretty dominant drive, and we scored a touchdown, and everybody was thinking, man, we might be pretty good. We went on to get blown out that game. And after the first 2 or 3 games, the coaching staff really had a bad attitude about where the season was headed. And while they didn't tell us that directly, we could feel it, in the games and in practice. Practice wasn't the usual mood. And so it trickled down to our captains, our senior captains on the team, and they started having bad attitudes, and they did tell us that directly. They would walk around school, walk around practice, telling us that we suck and we're not going to win. And eventually, that contagious bad attitude passed to the entire team. And whether you were starting or not, whether you were playing or not, and even everybody in the school that didn't have anything to do with the football program had a bad attitude about the season. And about the 5th game, it seemed like everybody gave up, and we weren't even competitive in any games anymore. It was just By the time that first whistle blew, everybody knew the outcome of the game. So you can't win with a bad attitude.
Now, if you're following along with the note-taking device, you'll see that bad attitude is underlined there, and that corresponds to your note-taking device.
However, good attitude is everything. And this brings me back to a moment from our most recent season that we just finished up a couple weeks ago, in our 29-21 win against Central. We went up 21-7, probably about 5 minutes left in the game, and everybody was like, man, yeah, we won the game. And so we start putting some backups in on defense, and once you know it, Central went down and scored, made it 21-14. And so we can't put our backups in on offense, and our offense, it would have been really easy to be like, man, why did we just give up that touchdown? But instead, our offense keep their heads up and went down and scored again to make it 29-14. And wouldn't you know it, our defense let up yet another touchdown to make it 29-21. And instead of putting our heads down and just kind of, being frustrated with the situation that we couldn't really put the game away 100%, our offense kept our heads up, kept our heads high, kept a good attitude, went out there and held the ball for a couple more minutes, and we'll put the game away.
It would have been real easy to get a bad attitude and totally change the outcome of that game.
Would have.
One of the things that we're going to see is that living the Christian life is the ultimate team sport. What I do affects you. What you do affects me. None of us live this Christian life together. None of us live this Christian life by ourselves. We have to do this together. Paul had this to say to the Philippians in Philippians chapter 2. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. Now, let me say this about what Paul had to say. Paul is not saying that you should have a negative self-concept. Paul is not saying that you should beat yourself down. What Paul is saying is you need to have each other's back. You need to be looking out for one another. You need to be helping them, encouraging them, and help facilitate what they do and make sure that you're looking out to their interests. If they've got a problem with clothing or a problem with finances, whatever that problem may be, or a problem with sin, it's incumbent upon us to, in humility, have each other's back. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. You see, Jesus had that attitude towards us. He didn't come down here for himself. He didn't come down here to establish himself and for his glory. He came down to help save us. Paul would also tell the Ephesians this: you were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by deceitful desires. This is not a thing that you do by yourself. Deceitful desires all center around me, all about me, and it is not about us. And that's one of the things that the scriptures tell us over and over again, is it's not about me. Be made new with the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God, as true righteousness and holiness. We are to be looking out for one another. We're to have each other's back. And to use Logan's illustration, we're to be facilitating what the next team does. We're to be helping each other, not trying to be a one-man band.
Now, obviously, you can't win anything without sacrifices. Romans 12:1 says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Obviously, with my time in football, I had to make a lot of personal sacrifices. I had to give up basically every summer. Every kid in here can tell you that they look forward to summer break because it's their time as a relief from school and the pressure from school. You get to sleep in and you get to relax for about 3 months. but every football player in here can tell you that that's not how it is for us. You're at practice every single day. This past summer, under our new head coach, we had to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning for our practices. So we did not get our summers off. We had to make personal sacrifices and give up our summer for football. But I also had to miss out on a whole bunch of family time. I had to miss out on multiple Disney trips that my parents took and that my family took. I had to miss out on multiple occasions where my parents had dinners with my grandparents, and I had to miss out on those times. Specifically, one time that I remember is my sister had a cheer competition in Orlando, and it was a pretty big competition. I think it was a 2-day competition. So my parents decided to get a cabin on Disney property, and we were going to spend a couple of days at Disney, and we were going to do all that. But I had football practice, so I couldn't go. That was a pretty big family moment that I had to make a personal sacrifice and miss. Another personal sacrifice I had to make over this past summer was learning to play a new position. As some of you guys may know, I transitioned from offensive line to quarterback this past offseason. So I had to put in multiple hours to go out there and learn to read defenses, to learn what different personnel means, where people are standing out on the field, and what that may mean for the play that we just called. But I wasn't the only one that had to make sacrifices. My parents had to make a bunch of sacrifices, paying for me to go to these training sessions, making sure that I had a way, transportation to get to these training sessions, and a lot of other players on my team had to make sacrifices to go with me to these training sessions to make sure that I was at my highest level of capability and to make sure that we had timing down on our routes and we were on the same page as far as everything like that went. So it's not just personal sacrifices that we have to make, but it's a whole team effort to make sure that we get the success of winning.
We cannot win at our spiritual life without sacrifices from others. I can't win without sacrifices from you. You can't win without sacrifices from me. But none of us can win without the sacrifice that God made on our behalf. Romans 3, verse 25 says, God presented Christ as a sacrifice of atonement through the shedding of his blood to be received by faith. He did this to demonstrate his righteousness because in his forbearance he had left the sins committed beforehand unpunished. I know that we come through here every day, and especially when we do our communion service, we think about the sacrifice that was made for us. But I think that's something we need to think about, not just on Sundays when we're here, but on an everyday basis. We couldn't even begin to have a good spiritual life without this tremendous sacrifice that Jesus made on our behalf. The writer of Hebrews went on to say, and do not forget to do good and to share with others, for with such sacrifices, God is pleased. You see, we all have to make sacrifices in order to help everyone have a good spiritual life. Now, you may be thinking, well, now what kind of sacrifice do I need to make? Well, Hebrews writer says, do good and share with others. One of the easiest things to do is to provide encouragement to one another. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but if I ask for a show of hands of how many volunteers we have in here, everyone would raise up. Everyone who enters our doors is a volunteer. We're here because we want to be. We're not here because somebody's paying us to be here. Well, Neil, but none of the rest of us are here because we're hired to do so. All of the teachers over here in the children's wing, they're all volunteers. Provide them encouragement. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24, and I'm going to paraphrase, tells us to think of ways to encourage one another. Some versions say to spur others on to goodness. Did you know that it's your job to be thinking of ways to motivate Neil? Did you know that it's your job to think of ways to motivate Jason? Motivate me. Hebrews says, do not forget to do good and to share with others, for with such sacrifices God is pleased.
Next point is no grass stains, no glory, no bruises, no story. When I thought of that, you think of like the hard times that you may have to go through. And one of the hardest times for, I think, me and my fellow captains on the football team this past off season was we started the summer with no head coach. The summer is where you get in the weight room, you get stronger, you get better, you build that cohesive bond with the team. But without a head coach, you can't really do much of that. And so me and my 3 other captains came together and we were like, we need to do something. We need to hold practice so that, we can keep somewhat of a team for this upcoming season. So we did. Every so often we would text the football group chat and say, hey, we're going to go train at district. Hey, we're going to go get speed and agility drills here at this field. Or, so we had to keep the team together, and that was a hard time for me and my captains waiting for the new head coach. But when we did get our new head coach, he worked us hard. The entire offseason was really hard. We were there from about 7 to 12 every day, constant work. But we had this thing every day at the end of our lifting sessions as a team. It was called Wildcat Bonding. And, you get used to it after a while. Usually it's some core workout or something, something that, builds you. And it's something that's hard to endure. But he calls it Wildcat Bonding because we all have to go through it together. If one man messes up, we restart as a team. The hardest Wildcat Bonding that I could think of, we ended up doing about 500 push-ups after our weightlifting session. And of course, we did arms that day too, so our arms were already dead. It was going to be about 300 push-ups, but like I told you, the bonding part came in where once somebody messes up, the entire team has to restart. So all of us, after our arm training session that day, had to do about 500 push-ups. And man, can I tell you, that's the definition of no grass stains, no glory, no bruises, no story.
Many people in living the Christian life don't want to put in the work. They don't want to take the reps. Now, what do I mean by that? What do I mean by putting in the work? By living the Christian life, by doing what we just read in Hebrews, by doing good for one another, by sharing with one another. Peter tells us in 1 Peter 2:9 in the King James Version that Christians are a peculiar people. We don't live by the standards of the world. Our success is not defined by the success standards of the world. I had a business partner when I was in the construction industry, and I had a piece of a company. Every year, he would measure his success by his net worth. And as he set goals for the next year, everything revolved around increasing his net worth, increasing the amount of money that he had coming in, and it was all about him. He really didn't care about anybody else. It all boiled down to what he was going to get out of it. You see, as Christians, we are a peculiar people. We look out for one another, or we are to look out for one another. We're to make sure that we've got everybody's back. We have to put in the work. We cannot, when it comes to our spiritual lives, get upset when we don't get the results that we didn't put in the work for. And when we don't have the Christian relationships that we would like to have, you have to put in the work. You have to offer that relationship to begin with. It's not going to just come to you.
The ultimate definition of somebody that puts in all the reps but doesn't get any of the glory is the scout team. For those of you unfamiliar with the term scout team, it's basically a backup team, the backups on the team going against the starters on the team, trying to prepare the starters for what they may see from the other team in the upcoming week. The scout team doesn't run any of our team's plays, but they'll run the other team's plays that we see on film, and they have to go against the starters who are starters for a reason. So those guys put in all the work so that others can succeed, and they don't get any of the glory at all. However, the team gets the glory of success and the wins.
Most of you know that I have another grandson, Ryan Anders, who was able to come and be with us over the holiday, but had to go back home. Ryan spent his entire collegiate basketball career on a scout team. He got to play some, but his job was to make the other guys better. His job was to put in the work, to do the sacrifices to make other people better. And that's what we're supposed to do as Christians. Think of yourself as being on the scout team. We are to put in the work ourselves so that we can help other people be better. This quote is attributed to so many different coaches over the years. I wouldn't want to attribute it to anybody, but I know that my high school swimming coach told us this every day. It's not the will to win on game day because everyone wants to win. It's the will to prepare to win that counts. You want to live a good, spiritual, Christian life, you got to do it every day. At home, in the office, in the marketplace, kneel on the roadways. We've got to put in the work every day. It's the will to prepare to win at our spiritual life that really counts. 1 Peter 5 puts it this way, "And the God of all grace who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while." Translate that to mean after you've put in the work, after you've lived the Christian life, after you've done the things that Christians do. After you've suffered a little while, himself restore you and make you strong and firm and steadfast. To him be the power forever and ever. Amen. The suffering we have is dealing with one another, is doing the work. It's being good Christian citizens and looking out after one another and taking care of everyone. Getting those spiritual grass stains on our knees by helping people out, bearing their burdens. It's by taking the bruises of living the Christian life, whether it be society rejecting you, people at work rejecting you, or whatever it may be. You've got to get the grass stains and you've got to get the bruises.
It ain't over until it's over. As anybody who watched college football yesterday may tell you, that this statement is more than true. Chris Ken will tell you in the Alabama game last night, down 3, it's like 22 seconds left, 4th and goal from their own 31-yard line. You know, everybody thought the game was just more than over at that point. But they throw up a prayer and they catch it in the back corner of the end zone and they win the game. Looking back in my athletic career, I don't have a lot of those moments. Usually we just lose. But one moment I can look back on is my final game just a couple weeks ago against Mitchell. Late in the 4th quarter, we were down by a lot. They were pretty good. It was 4th and 15. It would have just been easy, just to sit down and say, game's over. There's only a couple minutes left in the game. We're down by a lot. But instead, me and my fellow teammate Bupe rose up to the occasion, and instead we completed a 55-yard touchdown pass.
Robert, can you roll that? Robert? Okay. There, 4th and 15, the audio's not working here, but Logan's number 15, there he goes, going back.
Don't look at the score.
Isn't that the way it is in our Christian life? We find ourselves in a situation where it feels like that 4th and 15. Isn't that the way it works when we're in the office? When we feel like everybody's against us, when we feel like things just aren't going well. That's not the time to quit. That's not the time to quit doing well. Looks like we're going to run it again here.
No, we're good. It's good, Granddad.
Okay, never mind. Paul had this to say in Galatians 6, 9, and 10. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest. People who are in the people serving and people helping business suffer extremely high rates of stress, suffer extremely high rates of alcoholism and drug abuse, suffer extremely high rates of broken relationships and burnout. Every one of us need to be looking to everyone in our congregation and those around us to help them not become weary in doing good. That goes back to the providing encouragement that we talked about in Hebrews chapter 10. Encouraging Neil, encouraging me, encouraging everyone here so that they do not become weary in doing good. History is replete with people who were good-intentioned ministers who did awful things because they burned out and said, hey, what's in it for me? I'm giving to all these people, and I'm not getting anything in return. The road to damnation is littered with people like that. We need to make sure that none of if we want to apply a military analogy to it, that nobody in our company falls victim to that. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. This is our family. We are to be looking out after one another's back. I want to talk a little bit about a man by the name of John Stephen Akhwari. 1968, he was a Kenyan farmer, but he was also the number 3 ranked marathon runner in the world and was headed to the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City. Very high altitude place, and probably the highest altitude that they really run competitive marathons. Shortly after the start, all of the marathoners got caught up into a big tangle there at the exit gate of the stadium and fell down. And John Stephen Akhwari dislocated his left knee and had severe road rash abrasions. He got up, he continued the run. He finished the marathon 90 minutes after the winner. By the time he got to the stadium, they'd taken down the clocks. All the officials were in the press box. There was no one around. They were getting ready for the next event. There was a reporter there that said, John, what are you doing? You can't win this race. What you're doing is pointless. John Stephen Akhwari said, my country sent me here to finish the race. They did not send me here to start it. They did not send me here to drop out. They sent me here to finish the race, and that's exactly what I did. Going back to our theme verse today. Paul said, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. That is our charge. Our charge is to continue the race and not drop out. I want to point out 3 men who are no longer here that were perfect examples of that. Bobby Groves, Dave Chambers, and Jack Bieberlin. All of these men continued the race until the very end. I had numerous conversations with all 3 of those men. Dave Chambers and I used to talk a lot. For those of you who don't know, he spent many years tending to his wife as she suffered with dementia. And then after that was over, he came back and we had a conversation. I think I became known as the bathroom elder because I had lost track of how many little counseling sessions I had standing in the bathroom between Sunday school and services. But David confided in me several times about how hard it was to get back up on the horse and get back going after having gone through what he did with Wanda. But Dave Chambers continued on until the very last, until he couldn't do it anymore, and the same is true of Jack. And Bobby Groves Bobby continued on, providing guidance, providing help, providing assistance, and doing what Bobby did. These men fought the good fight. They finished the race just like John Stephen Aquari, just like Logan. Just because you're faced with adversity, just because you're faced with an impossible situation that you think you can't win, you gotta keep going.
To sum it all up, 4 points to remember. You can't win with a bad attitude. You can't win without sacrifice. No grass stains, no glory. No bruises, no story. And it ain't over until it's over.
There may be some of you here who, as we've been talking, have been thinking, where am I? How am I competing in my race? Where do I stand in this situation? You may have studied in the past and see that you need to respond to the Lord's invitation and be buried in baptism with Him. You may have a crisis in your life that needs the prayers of the congregation. Whatever your need, now is the time to come forward as we stand and as we sing. Good job.